So Betfair.
Well, so having had the original idea, it was then, I guess it sort of fermented in my mind for quite a long time. So I had a long time to think about it, and I was very busy, and I was making quite good money then because there was a lot of demand for anybody who wanted a website. So I was building all these little websites for all sorts of random people by then. They were fairly straightforward, and it was quite quick to put them together. So I had quite marketable skills, and I was juggling, probably 2 or 3 different contracts at the same time. So I was pretty flat to the boards, and I decided that I needed to take some time out to work on Betfair. So I basically found a sort of suitable point, closed off all of my work, and I took about 3 weeks out and literally just locked myself in a room, trying to force myself to build the first version of Betfair, because I just wanted to prove to myself that it could work, and I wanted to understand the sort of database schema that would sit behind it, and sort of any issues that might come up on the page, and so on and so forth. So it was a very simple version, not for the internet that I built, but anyway, I built it, I liked it, I was happy with it. And then I sort of tucked it away while I went back to work, because it's just pleasant, it's just nice to be earning good money, probably for the first time in my life. So it was kind of on the back burner. And then I was invited to a summer party by a friend of mine, Jeremy Ray. And while I was at the party, I got chatting to his brother Ed. And Ed had particular views about how the internet was going to pan out. He was working for JP Morgan at the time. And I disagreed with him. I said, no, I think it's all going to be different. I said, in years to come, there won't, you will have different types of betting on the internet. It won't be, a bookmaker offering you a price. It will be a bit of an offer spread, and people will come up there, and it'll be proper person-to-person stuff. And that's how I see it evolving. So I explained my vision to him. I didn't think much more of it at the time. He's probably the only person I spoke to about it, because I didn't speak to many people about it. But anyway, I told him what I thought. He sort of, nodded sagely, and that was that. And then I didn't see or hear from him again for a very long time, probably about 9 months. And by the 9 months later, I'd got to the point where I was just about to press the button on building it. So I tried to find a partner, and I'd sort of spoken to a few people, and I just gave up. I just thought, I'm just going to do this myself. So I'd lined up a developer in Manchester. I was living in London, but they were cheaper up there. I'd got my specs sorted. I'm literally about to press the button on the development when I get a phone call from Ed, completely out of the blue. And he said, oh, I've left JP Morgan, I'm looking to do an internet business. I've heard you're doing doing that thing that you spoke to me about. And I was like, yeah, totally. And he said, you looking for a partner? And I was like, well, yeah, definitely. So he came round to see me, and we agreed to do it together. And, shook hands on that, and that was that, and decided not to proceed with the development in Manchester, decided to take a little bit more time over it. I guess he had a different perspective to me. So I guess my perspective was the sort of, maybe the naive perspective of a developer, whereas his perspective was somebody coming from more of a management consultant sort of background. I mean, he was a banker. He was working for a bank at the time, but that was more his background. So he was more sort of seeing it in a more professional fashion, come up with an enormous, great big detailed business plan with all sorts of financial forecasts, and then go and raise money from venture capitalists. And I was just like, just build the thing and just put it out there and see what happens. So he had a more organised professional view of everything, and we went down the road he wanted to go down.
So you raised the money, you started Betfair, and at the same time, Flutter. So somebody had the same sort of idea as you around the same time. How did you feel about that when you realised?
Well, it wasn't just Flutter. So we decided to build Betfair, and the whole thing took about, from when having raised the money and put the business plan together, the build of the site took about 6 months, maybe less, maybe about 5 months actually. But during that time, we became aware that there were other people doing what we thought was the same thing. And Ed was very anxious about all of this, because once we found out that Flutter existed, that they were out there and that they had raised a lot more money than we had raised to do apparently the same thing as us. And Ed was like, oh my God, you know, these guys are doing exactly the same thing as us. They've literally got 20 times as much money as us. We're dead. And I was like completely relaxed about it. I probably shouldn't have been, but I was. And I was like, there's no way they're doing the same thing as us. It's taken me a long time to come up with these ideas, and I was very well positioned to come up with them in the first place. There's no way they're going to launch with the same product as us. It's going to be different, and we're going to be better. So I probably should have been terrified at the thought of them, but I wasn't. I was an optimist, and I tend to just have my head down and just push on anyway. That's my nature.
So what you were much better at was marketing.
I wouldn't say we're better at marketing. I mean, Betfair was different. So when we launched, Flutter launched about the same time, and so did a company called BetSwap and another one called BetMart. And BetMart, BetSwap, and Flutter all look like eBay. So if you went to Flutter to have a bet, you would put up a £50 bet and someone had to come and take it. But they couldn't take part of it. So if you wanted, so you might break it down into 10 different £5 bets, and they'd have to take each one of those. If you wanted to lay, say, 10 horses in the same race, and you lay them each to lose £1,000, well, you wouldn't be able to do it. But let's say you lay them each to lose £100, you'd have to have £1,000 in your account, because it says you could lose £100 there, £100 there. It didn't realise that they were all related events. So there was a lot of maths that should have been in there that wasn't. And the fact that and then if somebody put in a bet at even money, you could go to the front of the queue by going 1,001 to 1,000. And then they'd go jump over you by going 1,002 to 1,001. So you had all these tiny little games of leapfrog where people just jumping to the front of the queue all the time. So, you know, we had, you could take any amount of money you liked. If someone puts £1,000 up, you can take £27 of that. If you want to go past somebody, you know, if you're in there at a price of 3, they've got to go to 3.1. They can't go to sort of 3.001. They can't do these tiny little increments. So there was structure to Betfair, and Flutter was just like, each bet is like an item on eBay, and you have to take the whole thing and pay the price and so on and so forth. And you couldn't put offers up. You didn't have so you didn't have a bid offer spread. So it was like we were a sort of more mature version of what Flutter was, and we won the battle in the chat rooms, in the forums. So you'd have these people saying, hey, have you seen this new thing called Flutter? It's really cool. And somebody else would come, are you serious? You know, go to Betfair. That's just like way years ahead of these guys, you know. And so Flutter were losing the battle in social media.
But one of the marketing things that people remember, especially the bookmakers, was the death to bookmakers.
Yeah, it was a bit of a wind-up, yeah.
But you had racecourse bookmaker Maury Peter involved, so how do you feel about that?
No, that's not true. He wasn't involved. That's just something that so our Wikipedia says Maury Peter was involved. I don't even know who he...
I remember him on course. I remember his board on course.
Yeah, but I don't think he was involved. I know it says he was, but I don't think he was. That's just that. I don't think that's true, because I'm not even sure I know him.
Okay, so going on to Betfair's existing, you've absorbed Flutter in 2001, so you've seen off the serious opposition.
Yeah.
You've done your own gambling models and stuff when you were punting. Did you ever simulate which way it would go, as in the future, as it sort of turned out? I mean, did you assume that forevermore you'd be taking 5% of every transaction until each punter had lost their money and had to replenish the funds?
Well, we started off charging a flat 5% of every bet. Now, that wasn't my decision. So you've got to think, there were kind of different factions in the company. So I was the developer. So I ran the development team. You know, to a large extent I ran the product team, but you know, we'd have arguments about that. I was heavily involved in the marketing. But then separately to me, Ed sort of ran all the financial stuff. And with his team, and the PR stuff, and with his team, they sort of made decisions around how much we would charge. I mean, I had my view on how much we would charge, but they went away and did loads and loads of maths and came back and said, we've got to charge this, otherwise we'll never make money. So they started off saying we'll charge 5% per bet. Take 5% of every bet, otherwise we'll never make money. And I didn't believe that. I said, that's nonsense. You can't believe we'll never make money. This is the internet. You don't know how big this can get. We could easily make money at 2%. So I didn't agree with them, but that was their decision. So we started off with that, and then as things are moving forward, before we got to profitability, we're like, well, we probably need to be charging a bit less. So I said, well, I would quite like us to go 5% per market, so that you offset all your bets. Whether that was a good or bad decision, I don't know, because some markets you can play for like months, and other markets are over in minutes. But that's how we went down anyway. So we then went 5% per market. So if you have offsetting bets in a horse race, you win some, you lose some. You look at the P&L at the end, and we take 5% of that. And then the step after that was to go onto a sliding scale. So you have, the more money you spend, the lower your percentage rate, and it went from 5 down to 2. And we're charging on your profit, and we always did. So we always charge on any profit you make, as opposed to the size of the bet that you placed, because that wouldn't work if you're betting in really low odds. And that was, so that was kind of an evolution that changed. So quite quickly, we went from 5% down to much, much lower numbers.